bow your heads with me, please, and have a word of prayer. Kind, loving, heavenly, gracious Father, Lord, as I do this speech, Lord, I just want to bring out the doctrine of the Sabbath, Lord, and just give glory to your name, not my own. This has nothing to do with me other than what I'm getting on my grade. But, Lord, we want to lift your name up and give glory to the name of Jesus Christ. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. To be or not to be, that is the question. To keep the Sabbath or not to keep the Sabbath, that is the ultimate question. What is the Sabbath day? Who knows what the Sabbath day is? Cosmo. Let's hear it.
It's a day of rest instituted by God in the Garden of Eden.
Okay, good answer. What day is the Sabbath on? The seventh day. All right, great. Okay, let's go, if you want to go to Exodus 20, verse 8 with me, and on. The command stands true. It says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days that shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the 7th day is the Sabbath day of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and the earth, the sea and all that in them is, and rested the 7th day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Okay, that's a fairly long commandment. And if we notice, by looking at all of the other commandments, that one is surely the longest one in comparison to the rest of them. Now let's break this section down. Okay, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Okay, now I noticing in this first passage, remember, the words remember the Sabbath day. He said remember because he knew people would forget. Now, looking at the rest of the world, we see that to be true, right? Could I get a hand for somebody? What is the Sabbath day that people in the world now keep? Sunday sacredness, as they call it. Now, like I said, he made this commandment that starts with remember because he knew people would forget. And that's the very thing that happened. Now, if we look at the rest of the day, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. The Sabbath, or Shabbat, means cessation or time of rest. This should be acted on and treated differently than other days. And it is also believed that on this day, we are actually more blessed than any of the other days. Now, that's not to say that we shouldn't use the other days as worship, or, not to say that we're not blessed on those days as well. But it is believed that the Sabbath day is the holy day of rest, and it says so in the scriptures as well. Okay, so moving on. It says, 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. The 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. When is the Sabbath day? Okay. You guys want to kind of go with me here and just kind of yell out the days as I write them. Okay, this is an abbreviation.
Tuesday.
All right. Now, does this look familiar to any of you, the abbreviation? I mean, does it look familiar? Do you see it on calendars and such? Okay, so does the world itself actually constitute Sabbath as being the 7th day? I mean, think about it. Sabbath ends at the end of this abbreviation. Sunday to Saturday. Now, excuse the calendar. It is kind of biased because it has Sabbath at the end. And Doug Batchelor there too. But it starts from here. But I mean, this is the same as any calendar you will see out there. Starting with Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then going to like what we like to call Sabbath, but is Saturday. And if you notice in all the other languages, their words are actually similar to the word Sabbath. And so we see that we actually have it wrong, I think, in the English language. and referring to Saturday. Okay, moving on. It says, "In it thou shalt not do any work, thou nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates." This tells us that we are not responsible for what happens, or no, that we are responsible for what happens in our own domain, and we cannot control the people around us. I remember my grandpa was telling me a story about how he let somebody stay with him, and it was the Sabbath day, and the guy was in there in his room watching TV and like being kind of loud and boisterous in there. And my grandpa knocked on his door and politely asked him to turn the TV off, and the guy thought it was so strange. He was like, "Why?" And he's all, "Because it's the Sabbath day, his rest." And my grandpa was kindly letting this guy stay with him. And so it was really, he really had no room to argue with him. He wasn't paying rent or anything. So I believe, that we should have control within our own domain, our own home. It says it right here. It says your maidservant, your cattle, even the animals rest on the Sabbath. Okay, for in 6 days the Lord made the heaven and the earth, the sea and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. This part is the example of the verses. If God had to rest, how much more should we? This is telling us why we should rest. And that is because if we are working all this time and constantly just driving ourselves, and we don't have no time to rest or to think on God. And I think rest is more than just physically sitting down and resting. It's more just resting in God's peace, right? Basically thinking on the Lord, really engulfing yourself in the Lord, just studying His Word, doing His work, stuff like that. And I think that is the absolute epitome of what real rest is. All right, and in Exodus 31:15, it says, 6 days may work be done, but in the seventh is the Sabbath day, is the Sabbath of rest, holy to the Lord. Whosoever doeth any work in the Sabbath day, he shall surely be put to death. Wherefore the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, to observe Sabbath throughout their generations for a perpetual covenant, is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. Okay, now I think this verse is important. Some may say this is not a good example to show new believers because he says, he'll put them to death. But I think in that error, and actually we were taught this in class, that God was trying to establish a nation back then. And so everything had to have been kind of put in order, and anything that was broken kind of had to be dealt with right then and there in a very severe manner so that people didn't just start taking advantage and taking it for granted and, just doing their own thing. And so God kind of had to just be a little more strict at that point. And so, wherefore the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath and observe the Sabbath throughout their generations for what? A perpetual covenant is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. Okay, now I took the time and looked up some of these words. Perpetual. And the definition for perpetual is never ending or changing. Covenant, a written agreement or promise usually under a seal between two or more parties, especially for the performances of some action. Okay, now I think right here we see, just in these two words, that the Sabbath was not changed. Because perpetual is never ending or changing. If it's never ending or changing, that means right there that it's not changing, it's not ending. Perpetual. Covenant, a written agreement or promise usually under a seal between two or more parties, especially for the performance of some action. Okay, so if it's a promise, then we should keep that. We should keep that as a promise to God, because when we become His people, we take on all His statutes, and so we actually make that. We actually agree to that promise when we become Christians, do we not? I mean, all of God's statutes are for us to take into. Now, the dangers of changing a commandment can lead to confusion and could eventually create doubt in God's words, and it's a slippery slope. Okay, I just wanted to show you guys. Okay. Sorry about that.